The Cosby Show changed television forever. But behind the laugh track was rejection, control, and a finale shadowed by one of the worst civil disturbances in American history. From a pilot ABC turned down 3 times to a Greenwich Village brownstone pretending to be Brooklyn, it's a miracle this show ever became the biggest sitcom on Earth. Here are 14 strange facts about The Cosby Show, plus a bonus fact revealing a historic streak only one other sitcom has ever matched. ABC rejected the pilot 3 times before NBC picked it up. Executive producers Marcy Carsey and Tom Werner had previously worked at ABC, so the network was their natural first stop when they began shopping the pilot in 1984. ABC president Louis Ehrlich and his team passed, giving 3 reasons. They believed a wealthy black family with 2 professional parents would seem unrealistic to viewers, that stand-up comedians didn't work as sitcom leads, and that the sitcom genre itself was dying after years of declining ratings. The pitch moved to NBC, where entertainment chief Brandon Tartikoff had already seen Bill Cosby riff about family life on The Tonight Show and was convinced he could anchor a series. Tartikoff picked it up. The show debuted on September 20th, 1984, and spent 5 consecutive seasons as the #1 show in America, exactly the kind of hit ABC insisted couldn't exist. The pilot storyline came directly from a 1983 stand-up film. Much of the original pilot material was lifted almost entirely from Cosby's 1983 concert film, Bill Cosby himself, in which he riffed for over an hour about marriage, parenting, and the chaos of raising kids. Tartikoff had seen similar material during Cosby's Tonight Show appearances and believed those routines could be reverse-engineered into scripted comedy. That's exactly what Carsey and Werner did, turning monologues about discipline, dating, picky eaters, and homework into scripted beats acted out by the fictional Huxtable family. The pilot was less an original screenplay than a translation of an already tested stand-up set into sitcom form, so audiences who'd seen the film were essentially watching jokes they'd already laughed at, now performed by a full cast in a Brooklyn brownstone. Cliff Huxtable was originally called Clifford before being renamed Heathcliff. In the earliest Season 1 episodes, Cosby's character was named Clifford, with Clifford even appearing on the exterior of the Huxtable home. By mid-season, the show switched the name to Heathcliff, a nod to Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, though the reasoning was never explained by the writers or Cosby himself. Because the character was almost always called Cliff for short, casual viewers likely never noticed the change. Vanessa also briefly called her brother Theo, Teddy, a couple of times early on before that nickname disappeared for good. The early run of the show was full of these small course corrections as the writers figured out exactly what the series was going to be. Whitney Houston was considered for the role of Sandra. When the show added a 5th Huxtable child after the pilot, Houston was one of the top contenders to play Sandra, the family's Princeton-bound oldest daughter. She was in her early 20s and already building a recording career, having signed with Arista Records under Clive Davis the year before. Houston passed on the full-time TV commitment because she'd already decided to pursue music instead. Her self-titled debut album dropped in February 1985, just months after the show premiered, and became the best-selling debut album by a solo artist in music history at the time. The role went to Sabrina Le Beauf instead. Had Houston taken it, she'd have been locked into the show through 1992, and her music career might never have happened as we know it. Sandra wasn't in the original pilot at all. The pilot featured only 4 Huxtable children: Denise, Theo, Vanessa, and Rudy. After the pilot, Cosby decided the show needed a 5th child so the family could reflect the experience of raising a kid all the way to adulthood and college graduation, an arc the younger 4 couldn't provide since they were all still in school. Sandra was created to fill that gap, written as the oldest daughter and a Princeton pre-law student. She was first mentioned in dialogue in episode 6 of season 1 and made her first on-screen appearance in episode 10. By season 2 she was a regular, and Le Beauf played her for the next 7 seasons through the 1992 finale. Felicia Rashad won the role of Claire Huxtable partly because she spoke fluent Spanish. The character was originally conceived very differently. The writers planned for Claire to be Dominican, with a comedic device modeled directly on I Love Lucy, where she'd launch into furious Spanish outbursts whenever Cliff frustrated her, echoing how Ricky Ricardo would switch into Spanish on that show. The writers needed an actress who could deliver those lines convincingly, and Rashad, then credited as Felicia Arzalin, walked into the audition with fluent Spanish from her academic background, which helped lock her into the role. The Dominican angle and the Spanish outburst gag were dropped before season 1 aired, replaced by the polished corporate lawyer version of Claire that audiences came to know, but Rashad had already won the part by then. She was credited as Felicia Rashad Ayres for that first season. Cosby insisted on filming in New York City instead of Los Angeles. Nearly every major American sitcom of the early 1980s was shot in LA, where the studio infrastructure, talent, and writers' rooms were all concentrated. Cosby refused to follow that model, insisting the show tape in New York, where he'd lived for years and wanted to keep his family during production. The show set up at Kaufman Astoria Studios in Queens, with additional work at NBC's Brooklyn facilities. The decision made production more difficult and expensive and required cast and crew to relocate east, but Cosby's contract gave him the leverage to hold the line. The show shot in New York for all 8 seasons, making it one of the few major sitcoms of its era to maintain an East Coast production base from premiere to finale. The Huxtable home's exterior wasn't actually in Brooklyn. The family was written as living in a Brooklyn brownstone, and dialogue throughout the series referenced their Brooklyn neighborhood. But the establishing shot that opened every episode was actually filmed at 10 St. Luke's Place in Greenwich Village, Manhattan, a location that had already been used in other film and TV productions. The crew never swapped in an actual Brooklyn brownstone, and the Manhattan shot stayed in the opening for the show's entire run. For 8 seasons, viewers believed they were looking at a Brooklyn home that was really in Greenwich Village the whole time, and tourists still occasionally show up at that address looking for the Huxtable house. The show literally saved NBC from financial collapse. When it premiered in 1984, NBC was in serious trouble, stuck in third place behind CBS and ABC for years and losing tens of millions annually. Tartikoff was trying to rebuild the primetime lineup, and The Cosby Show was one of his biggest gambles. It paid off immediately. The series jumped to third in the ratings in its first season and to number 1 by season 2, where it stayed for 5 years. It anchored what became NBC's must-see TV Thursday lineup, which later added Family Ties, Cheers, A Different World, and Seinfeld. Within 2 years of the premiere, NBC overtook both rivals to become the top network in America. Tartikoff later credited the show with single-handedly turning around the network's fortunes, pulling it out of last place and into a decade of dominance. Sabrina LaBeouf was only 10 years younger than her TV mother. LaBeouf, born in 1958, played Rashad's daughter Sandra, while Rashad, born in 1948, played her mother Claire, a gap of just 10 years. That created real challenges during casting, as producers worried audiences wouldn't buy the mother-daughter dynamic if they noticed how close the actresses were in age. LaBeouf nearly lost the role over the issue, but won it because the chemistry read well on tape. The costume and lighting teams worked to make the gap less visible, and Cosby personally signed off on her casting. The age difference was never a real point of criticism, and most viewers never noticed that the on-screen daughter and mother were essentially the same generation in real life. The series finale aired during the Los Angeles riots and still pulled 44 million viewers. The finale aired April 30th, 1992, 2 days after the verdicts in the Rodney King trial had sparked riots across Los Angeles, plunging the city into one of the worst civil disturbances in modern American history. The local NBC affiliate, KNBC, nearly preempted the finale for continuous riot coverage, but Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley personally lobbied the station to air it anyway, arguing its significance to the moment was too important to skip. Cosby recorded a special message that aired alongside the broadcast in Los Angeles, asking viewers to stay home and pray for good sense across the country. The finale still drew 44.4 million viewers nationwide, one of the most-watched series finales in TV history, even though the plot itself was small in scale. Theo graduated from NYU, and Cliff finally fixed the broken doorbell that had been a running gag all season. Cosby had unprecedented contract power, including clauses banning smoking, drugs, and derogatory humor. His deal with NBC and Carsey-Werner Productions gave him near-total creative control over the show, with specific clauses prohibiting depictions of smoking, drug use, and derogatory humor. Any storyline he objected to could be killed before production, and every script required his final approval, a level of authority rarely given to a single performer rather than a studio or network. Cosby also held an ownership stake through his production deal, which would go on to earn him hundreds of millions in syndication revenue over the following decades. The result on screen was a sitcom with an unusually consistent tone across all 8 seasons, holding the same values and comedic style from its 1984 premiere to its 1992 finale. A Harvard Medical School psychiatrist served as production consultant. Dr. Alvin Toussaint, a Harvard psychiatrist and dean of students known nationally for his research on the effects of racism in the Black community, reviewed every script and storyline before production, ensuring the show promoted a positive, healthy, and realistic image of Black families to a national audience. He had specific authority over how parenting, education, mental health, and identity were portrayed, and worked closely with Cosby throughout the series' run, becoming one of the closest behind-the-scenes voices on the show. He also consulted on the spin-off A Different World during its 6th season and continued advising on television projects into the 2000s. Toussaint died in February 2025 at age 90. The theme song, Kiss Me, had 7 different versions across the show's run. The theme was composed by jazz musician Stu Gardner alongside Cosby himself, longtime musical collaborators. Across the 8 seasons, 7 different arrangements of the song were used, each paired with a brand new opening sequence featuring fresh choreography for the cast. Cosby danced with the family in each version, with the choreography updated annually to reflect the changing cast and tone of the show. The Season 1 opener differed from Season 2's, which differed from Season 3's, and so on. Few sitcoms in television history have used that many distinct versions of a single theme song, and the dance sequences remain iconic enough that clips still circulate decades later. As a bonus, only one other sitcom in Nielsen history has matched The Cosby Show's 5-season run at number 1. The show finished as the top-rated series in America for 5 consecutive seasons, from 1985 to 86 through 1989 to 90. The only other show to ever hold the number 1 spot for 5 straight seasons was All in the Family, which dominated from 1971 to 72 through 1975 to 76. Together, these are the only 2 sitcoms to achieve that streak. The Cosby Show finally lost the top spot in its 7th season, dethroned by Roseanne, finishing second for 1990 to 91 before running through its 8th and final season in 1992. No sitcom in the decades since has matched what these 2 shows did at the top of the ratings. The Cosby Show was a series built on paradoxes. A pilot rejected 3 times for being unrealistic, a storyline lifted from a stand-up film, a Brooklyn brownstone that was really in Greenwich Village, a network rescue mission disguised as a family sitcom, and a finale that aired amid one of the worst civil disturbances in American history and still pulled in tens of millions of viewers. 8 seasons, 5 consecutive years at the top of the ratings, a record only one other sitcom has ever matched.